episode of Peephole Pictures, we're looking at The Farmer's Daughters from 1976.
Hey, I think that sheriff got the dogs after us yet. Don't be dumb. They probably don't even know we're gone yet.
Yeah, what makes you so sure?
Because of the big fat bribe I gave the guard, that's how. They're coming after us, I tell you. They're coming. Hey, shut up.
Them's girls' voices. Laughing.
Let's go.
Yeah, cool it, Pat. They must live near here. We find the house, maybe we find a car.
So we're in the middle of summer right now, and the last place you want to be is underneath the scorching sun on a hot day, let alone on a farm. You got, the sights and especially the smells that might get to you, and especially being on this farm, man, you definitely do not want to be there. We're talking about The Farmer's Daughters from 1976, directed by, written by, and starring Zebedy Colt, as well as in the film we also have Gloria Leonard, Susan McBain, Marlene Willoughby, and most famously Spalding Gray. And I think that's probably the biggest thing to note right off the bat is I kind of get the sense that this film has gained a wider audience because of the inclusion of Spalding Gray, a famous kind of monologuist, playwright, actor who in his early years, or I guess early filmography years I should say, did a couple of adult films. He did this film in 76, he did Love in 72, and then he also did Maraschino, like Sherry, I can't say that, from Radley Metzger. And then would gain a lot of notoriety later for his monologues, his plays. I would actually recommend going on YouTube and looking up some of his work. Very fascinating guy. There was actually a documentary made about him in 2010 by Steven Soderbergh. Spalding Gray, I wasn't completely familiar with. I think I knew the name, and I had seen, after looking up, had seen some of his stuff before, but ultimately was a bit of an interesting introduction to him as an artist. But anyways, The Farmer's Daughters, aside from the inclusion of him, this is considered, a notable roughie of the time. This is, like I said, written and directed by Zebedy Colt, who only did a handful of films, and I think actually there's a song in the film as well. I think he may be the one who sung. I'm not totally sure about that. I couldn't really find any confirmation on that, but it did just sound like him, and I believe he was a songwriter before this film. Don't quote me on that. But either way, so he is the matriarch of the family. And what a family he's got. I mean, trying to break down the plot of this is kind of nonsense. This is a fairly short film. This runs in at only about an hour, and even then it really kind of crawls to the finish line. So it's easy to kind of just give away the entire film. And I think I'll give away a decent amount, but when you actually watch the film, where it goes to in the third act, the third act is pretty out there, and I think if you are interested in this kind of film, it'd be better to kind of see for yourself. I mean, the setup for the film is pretty nonsense as is, man. I mean, it starts off with the three farmers' daughters in question, which are Nancy Dare, Marlene Willoughby, and Susan McBain, and they're watching their parents have sex, Gloria Leonard and Zebedy Colt. And right off the bat, before we even get into anything, man, I thought there was an audio delay or something like that, because I'm watching the film, and immediately, it's not even that the audio isn't in sync. It's like people are talking and they're not even on camera, and I'm thinking, what is going on here, man? Is there like an audio delay? Is something playing in the background? Like, what is going on? But no, it's not that, because the whole first part of the film, the first like 5 to 10 minutes, it's all ADR'd, and I thought it was a case where, okay, maybe they filmed it and they, the audio got lost, or a guy was unusable or something like that. Anything can happen. You guys ever see Things by Barry Gillis? There you go. But then pretty soon in the film, you get the audio from the actual film itself, so I don't know what it's all about, but it's completely bizarre, man, because, I mean, you see the actors' mouths moving as if they're talking, so I don't know if maybe they just lost the audio for this part, or for whatever reason, this is the only part that was noticeably dubbed over. I mean, besides later on, but I can get to that when we get to that. But it's ridiculous, man. It just keeps going on, and the ADR they are doing is it's just strange, man. Because whoever's doing Zebedy Colt's ADR, he keeps laughing, but it's like I don't know what the hell he's laughing at, man. It's like it'll go silent, and then it'll be like, and it'll go silent. and they'll go, and it looks like, but it's not like the same repeated audio. It's like different audio of him laughing. I'm like, man, what is so funny? I mean, maybe somebody told them a joke right before it started recording or something, man. I don't know. But anyways, I mean, the whole setup is bizarre as this. They're watching their parents have sex, and we have cut to this farmhand, played by Bill Cort. And he, right off the bat, he's like, man, what are you guys doing? He's not even good at sex. That guy, all he does is gets on top, it's sex all he does, man. They're starting to mock him. They're like, what do you know about it? And they decide to have their way with him. But positive and negative, the location of this film I think is great. I looked online and it said that this was Zebedy Colt's farmhouse in New Jersey, and it looks great, man. It's very open, very scenic, beautiful greeneries. It'd be a great location for a lot of films, and to my knowledge, I believe that Zebedy Colt would go on to film other films here at that farmhouse. It's a really good setting, man. It actually was kind of bringing me back a bit to Memories Within Miss Aggie, which I talked about a little while ago. But they decide to have their way with him at this I don't even know what it is. It's like a greenhouse or something like that. It's like a little shack, I guess. I don't even know. But it seems like pretty far away because they grab him and they're walking a distance, man. It's like, where the hell are they going? And then it cuts to them having their way with him, but it's just bizarre because the tone is just so off in this first part, man, because it's like they're straight up just sexually assaulting him, and it's the way they're playing it. It's like it's just being played for laughs. This is trying to be serious, but then you see Bill Cort and he looks like he's like laughing in his scenes, man. It's like it's ridiculous as all hell, man. And it's when you're watching it. Oh, and actually, before I even get to that, I wanted to mention a bizarre piece of dialogue. I forgot which one of them says it, but after Bill Cort catches them looking on the parents, they go, "Oh, you done went and spoiled everything." It's like, well, he didn't even do anything. He's just standing there, man. I mean, it's like, I don't think he's in the wrong in this situation. But anyways, they decide to have their way with him, and as well, the editing is just real bizarre in this sequence as well. It feels like a lot of footage. It seems like a lot of footage and also not a lot of footage spliced together, because even in the previous scene as well, when it looks like that Zebedy Colt's about to finish, we see his arm kind of going for it, and it's like, okay, this is going to be the end of the scene, and then nope, it cuts away, it cuts back, and he's still on top of her. It's like, what is going on here, man? And it's not even as if they was from like a different angle or anything like that, man, because eventually Gloria Leonard has to help him out, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. So it's like, all right, so maybe who knows, man? I could speculate all day, but ultimately it's not going to get us anywhere. But we get to the scene with all four of them, and I don't know what they're going for with here, man. I think this might be a contender for the longest finishing shot I may have seen in a film. This goes on for like about a minute, man. I'm like, what is happening, man? The dude is with these girls, and he eventually does what he has to do. But then it just keeps like cutting back, and it keeps like doing close-ups, man. I'm like, how much does this dude have in him, man? For somebody who supposedly didn't want it, man, I don't know, man. He got a lot in him. It's wild as hell, man. Because it seems like even immediately when they start assaulting him, he's saying like, no, man, I don't want this. But then pretty soon he's like, all right, why not? But then I guess that's not good enough for them, because they decide to humiliate him, and they start to do some questionable acts on him. And it's funny because then Marlene Willoughby is like slapping him on the ass with a fly swatter, like pretty lightly, man. It makes a fly swatter, and he's in the ground. He's like, "Oh man, that hurts." Oh, I'm like, "Stop it, man! I can't believe, what are you doing?" It's like, what is happening here? I'm like, just get up, It's like just get up off the ground, man. But I think actually they may have tied him up at that point. So all right, maybe he just is getting maybe he's really sensitive to being hit by a fly swatter. I don't know, but. Even with that scene, man, it's like he finishes, but then it'll cut to Marlene Willoughby, and it looks like she's still like riding him from the previous shot. So it looks like a lot of the same footage is kind of recycled, or certain scenes that they only had X amount of footage of, they just cut that up, regardless if it made sense to any kind of continuity. But so, you're watching this and you're like, all right, well, this is one crazy farm, man. What else could possibly go on in this farm? Well, let me tell you, man. Not only is there wild, pseudo-incest going on, I say pseudo because they're watching their parents bone, but having a good time watching bone, and sexual assault happening. I mean, you're like, oh my gosh, what the hell's going on this farm? Well, we got 3 escaped convicts that make their way over, played by John Black, Spalding Gray, and Philip Marlowe. And then from there, we just, actually, it's funny because they're in the woods, man. They're trying to find their way around, which again, beautiful greeneries. It's a great forest setting. I mean, I assume this shot in particular was in New Jersey as well. I mean, it makes sense. This looks like kind of like a weekend sort of shoot, but it's funny because they hear the ladies having their way with Bill Cort, and they're like, "Oh man, what was that? Yeah, let's go see what that is." And then they cut, and these dudes are like a mile away, man. It's like they're really far away, and I'm like, man, it's not like they're yelling or anything. They're like, they're talking and being like, yeah, you like that, this and that. But it's like how far away are they, man? It's wild as all hell. But they get there, man, and then it becomes something of a home invasion film, with becomes these three guys versus all of this family, man. And Bill Cort's somewhere there too. He kind of disappears for a while, and then when he pops back up in the film, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Where was he this whole time? He's just hanging out. What was he doing? I mean, the film is ridiculous, man. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the thing with a film like this is that with it being a roughie, I think the acting especially can be really make or break for the tone you're trying to go for, man. And I think the tone is something that is a problem with this film. I mean, the assault scene early on between Marlene, Nancy, and Susan against Bill. I mean, the tone there is kind of off. It doesn't really work because you see Bill laughing, and I don't know if that's supposed to be intentional or not, but then it's like, all right, well, maybe they're just, I don't know what they're doing. But then later on, it's like the assault sequences are done for the most part pretty well. I mean, John Black has the first one, and it's well done, man. It's actually well shot. When they're using the audio again, not the ADR, but the regular audio, I think. And I mean, it's a harsh sequence, but it's well done, man. But then I gotta look back because I think it's Philip Marlowe who's holding back Zebedy Colt, but he's not really even holding him, man. He just kind of has his arm around him, and I'm thinking Zebedy Colt's just standing there, man, just watching this go on. It's like, brother, why don't this happens like 2 or 3 times where, actually, this does happen 2 times, I think, where he's watching this terrible thing, something terrible happen, and then at like the very last second he decides to intervene when it's like, brother, why didn't you do this about 5 minutes ago, man? What the hell's going on here, man? And he obviously fails at every attempt. I mean, this dude, I don't know what he's doing in these sequences, man, but he's just standing back and seeing this horrible thing happen. It's not like really tied up or anything like that. He's just kind of being held, arm around his chest, but hey, what's going on? But anyways, as it's going on, and again, I mean, this film's only about an hour or so it's really easy to kind of break down everything that happens in it. And when I say it's an hour, man, I mean, the ending of this film, I'd say the very end, after we get to the third act, the very end does kind of feel like stretching it out at least for about another minute or 2, because, I mean, some places I see this listed as an hour, some I see it listed as 58 minutes or so. I mean, it feels like when you get to the end of the film, it's bizarre and exciting because the character fires off a gun and they keep sounding off the gunshots to basically just footage from the film, man. They basically just go through the entire film again. I mean, I guess it's like if you're watching like a sitcom or something, and at the end they're showing stills from the episode throughout the credits, and it's just like, what's going on here, man? It's not like a character's like remembering any of this because like the character wasn't even like there for most of the stuff. I mean, there are some special effects as well. I mean, they look how they're going to look. I'm not expecting anything, amazing or anything like that. There's a little bit of blood. There's a little bit of, with the gunshots. It's mostly just characters who do get harmed. They basically just you can see the blood put on themselves. There's one character you see, they put their hand over their chest, and it's like they just splattered the blood down themselves, man. It's completely ridiculous. But, I mean, I'm not looking for any kind of major technical achievements on that front, because ultimately that's not what the film is really trying to aim for, man. The film really is kind of aiming to shock and be very transgressive because, I don't know how much I want to give away. I think if you're into some of this more kind of humiliation, not even necessarily dominating in the way that you might think, but dominating in the way of just, bodily fluids, I'll leave it at that. I mean, then, hey, man, then go for it. Although it is funny because, I mean, there's one part that happens at the end of this film, and I swear, man, it goes on for like a minute or so. I'm like, how much did these people have in them, man? I mean, good Lord, it's just completely ridiculous. It keeps cutting back, and they're still going with what they're doing, and I'm like, my gosh, man, I actually should have timed it, because it's fascinating how long that sequence goes on for, and the thing with the film, though, is it's never boring. I mean, it does move along at a decent pace, mostly in part duly because of, I mean, the bizarre dialogue, the ADR. There's one line where I forget if it was Susan McBain or Nancy Dare. I forgot, one of them says like, "Oh, are you turning into a werewolf?" I'm like, what? What's that? Doesn't make sense in the context here. I think she said because you're biting me, but I'm like, but it's not a full moon though. It doesn't. Wouldn't it make more sense if she said you're a vampire? Actually, that wouldn't make sense either because they're in the sunlight. What am I talking about? The line doesn't make any sense. But you got to wonder how much is just improvised either on set or after the fact. Because I mean, also with the ADR, for the mention as well, there's two noticeable ADR sounds at the end of just like it's supposed to be when there's some the oral sex scenes are happening, but it sounds like so muffled and it sounds like they're just way too close to the microphone. It's ridiculous, man. It sounds like someone eating food or something. It's like, you ever have that feeling when somebody's eating and you just hear them eating, man? It's like, oh, it's like disgusting, man. I think it's so loud, man. I mean, I was listening to this with headphones on, and I'm like, my gosh, man, this is like louder than most of the dialogue. What? I think they may have just cut from the same audio, maybe not the same exact audio, but that same session where they're like, all right, just make it sound like that in the microphone and we'll cut it up into two. I mean, it's a bizarre film to even try to recommend because it's not particularly good, but it's endlessly fascinating. It's just, I mean, it's when it comes to a film like this, because it's going for a mean-spirited streak, which is what most of the sections in this film are, if not transgressive in a way that you'll see. Especially get to the third act, which I won't even give away. I think if you really are interested in the film and you're interested to see where the hell it's going to go, then hey, go for it. Because, I mean, the third act is just like, what? What are we doing now? It's like, I guess they did set this up, but they didn't. It's like the characters aren't even like really resisting all that much. They're like, all right, I guess I have to. It's like, my gosh, man, what the hell kind of farm life is going on here, man? It's completely ridiculous. But when you have this mean-spirited streak, I think more so than anything else, the acting is really important to this to really kind of sell something meaner if they're actually going for. I always point to the sequence in Forced Entry with Harry Reams because I think most of that film. The acting does kind of hurt a lot of that, but the strongest scene in that film where it feels the roughest is undoubtedly the scene with Laura Cannon, who was just a really solid actress in her own right. Her and Harry Reams would also be together in one of the most romantic kind of relationships in an adult film, which was Fleshpot on 42nd Street. Maybe I'll talk about that one day, but it's funny to see. But in context of that, it kind of shows how strong of an actress that she was, because that scene, her cries and her screams they feel very genuine, they feel very sad, and that's why most of that film is an interesting oddity, but that scene in particular really kind of stands out where you go like, all right, this is actually really solid acting going on here. Here it never really does that. I mean, at least the scene with John Black and Gloria Leonard, I think is well acted enough, but then later on, I think the ADR kind of goes a little too overboard where it starts to kind of feel a little dangerous and it starts to kind of feel like, ooh, this is transgressive, but then it's just a lot of repeated dialogue and to the point where it starts getting fairly repetitive and it's just not very convincing, man. And I think that for a film like this, because it's trying to balance kind of this wacky tone with something more mean-spirited, it could work, but the acting is really what kind of holds a lot of the more uglier parts that are intended to work back in a way that I don't think it totally comes together in that regard. I mean, this film is really recommended as more so of an oddity than anything else. I mean, I imagine that people who are Spalding Gray fans would watch this purely out of just curiosity because, I mean, he doesn't have a lot of lines in the film, but he does have just a couple. And, compared to most others, he delivers them fairly well. Really, him actually, and all three of the convicts are actually not too bad, man. John Black and Philip Marlowe. I mean, there's some ridiculous dialogue. The whole thing with like Simon says this and Simon says that. It's like, what? And then Bill Cort comes back and then he starts quoting the Simon Says thing. And I'm like, dude, I think you were like a mile away. Like where were you, man? Did you even hear this going on? He's kind of like sneaking around and I'm like, was he there when they were saying that stuff? I don't know. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. It just made me think for a second. Like, wait, what the hell's going on with that, man? The camera work as well kind of varies. It's the earlier assault sequence between Marlene, Nancy, Susan, and Bill. is mostly well shot. I mean, it's handheld, so you can feel the camera being walked towards the actors. So that, I think in general with any kind of film, any kind of handheld camera like that, gives it more of a sense of realness. But then later on, there are times where it's just so up close that it's just so you can't even see what you're looking at. During one of the later assault sequences, it's just, I mean, if it's going for something more artistic, that's one thing, but because it's not consistent with the rest of the film and it doesn't really seem to fit the tone of it, of that particular sequence, it comes across as just kind of strange of just what am I looking at, and then when we kind of get an angle of some body part or something, it's like, well, I don't even know what person we're looking at right now, besides, John Black, who's the only black one in the cast, so I mean, you're going to know it's him, but when it comes to Philip Marlowe or Spalding Gray, it's just like, what is going on here, man? It's just completely ridiculous. But as it is, I mean, as just a 70s roughie, I don't think it's bad. I think the questionable ADR, the questionable dialogue, the questionable plot choices kind of make it fascinating in its own right. And I don't even mean that as a backhanded compliment, because it's really not that. I think there actually is a lot of really solid work here. I mean, Gloria Leonard is always fantastic in whatever she's in. She's solid here. Zebedy Colt, I really like the look of him. He's got this fatherly kind of like his gray hair sort of look. That's great. Marlene Willoughby is always good. I'm a big fan of her, and I don't know. It's not bad, man. It's worth watching as a curiosity. Is it a particularly great film? Not necessarily. Watch it if you're into this sort of not even dominating, because it's really not that, but I guess more mean-spirited, domineering, sort of, if you will. And the ending does. I don't even know if it was intentional or not. It's going for like a plot twist at the end, but I don't know how intentional it is, especially with the editing of the previous sequence. I really don't know, man. You could go either way, honestly. But with that said, I mean, the film itself is it's watchable, man. It's not bad. It's fascinating. This can be watched online fairly easily. This does have an Impulse DVD that I don't think has any features on it. The version that I watched looked fine. I mean, it looks how you want one of these films to kind of look if you're going for a roughie. It's got sort of that grainy 16mm look, but it works. It's actually surprisingly in good condition. I'd be interested to pick up the DVD for a good price, because I probably wouldn't watch again, but as a curiosity piece, I think it's worth watching in that regard, purely for contextual sake. But yeah, that's The Farmer's Daughters from 1976. There's a couple of films called The Farmer's Daughter, so make sure you look up the 1976 one. Worth a watch if you're into this kind of subgenre. But that's all I gotta say, man. So hey, man, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's all I got, man. Thank you.